Good afternoon, friends. I'm here today to tell you the third part of the great epic of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, a story from 6,000 years ago that took place in Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent of the world, which lies where today Iraq, Kuwait, and Assyria stretch, almost from the Mediterranean Sea to the Gulf of Arabia. So this large, verdant valley with the Tigris and the Euphrates flowing through it, whence rose some of the greatest civilizations of all history. Incredible age of invention. And in this time period, we have met Gilgamesh, one of the kings of Uruk, and his best friend, Enkidu. And in our last segment, Gilgamesh had decided to go and kill Huwawa, who was the great god of the cedar forests, whom the gods had placed there and created. Anu, Enlil, the great gods of the panoply of Mesopotamian gods and goddesses. So, Gilgamesh had obtained permission from Shamash, the sun god, who agreed to his quest and would support him, given the idea that every evening Enkidu would draw, or one of them would draw water from some source and raise it high to Shamash to ask for blessing and continued protection. So the two warriors set off, and they walked many long leagues in each day, 4 or 5 times what a normal person could probably do. And after 3 days, they came to a gate, and there at the gate there were many, many signs. Keep out. No one enter, upon pain of death. Huwawa rules here. No one is allowed to enter the great cedar forest without permission. Do so at your own risk. Prepare to die. All sorts of horrible sayings on this gate. And Enkidu put his hands onto the gate to open it, and all of a sudden he felt terribly dizzy and ill, and he said to Gilgamesh, Don't come in, don't come in. There's magic here. But when Enkidu opened his eyes, he saw Gilgamesh had already entered the gate and was striding down the valley between the mountains happily, so Enkidu had to keep up. They walked for 3 more days, and they came to a beautiful green mountain softly covered with grass, and they hadn't stopped, so then they lay down to rest. And they both fell asleep immediately, and they slept like babies all night long. And it was the best sleep ever. In the morning, though, Enkidu woke up and realized that Gilgamesh was not awake and tried to wake him, shook him, slapped him, poured water on his face from his skin at his waist, rolled him down the hill, stepped on him, yelled at him. He tried everything, and then all of a sudden Enkidu remembered they had forgotten to get the water and bless it the night before, so he raced down the mountain till he found a tiny stream, and holding some water in his hand, he rushed back and dripped it onto Gilgamesh's face, and Gilgamesh woke up. And Gilgamesh just stood up, started putting on his armor, and Enkidu was, Gilgamesh, this isn't a good sign, the magic is too strong, let's go back. But Gilgamesh was intent on going, so they walked on, and they came to the mountain where Huwawa lived. And Huwawa, who could hear a fox foot 60 miles away in the forest, knew they were coming and called out of his door of his home. He said, Who comes into my forest? Who dares to come? So he was calling, and Enkidu and Gilgamesh heard him, but they marched on. And then Huwawa wrapped the first of his magical capes. He had 7 hanging on pegs on the wall. He wrapped the first of his magical capes around him, and he stepped out of his home. Now, his home is on the top of a mountain, and it has 7 walls. There are 7 layers of walls in Enkidu's home. Not Enkidu, Huwawa's home. Apologize. And he steps out, and Gilgamesh and Enkidu see him. He's so tall, he blots out the sun. The forest around him looks like grass around his ankles. Enkidu and Gilgamesh look like tiny ants. This really takes Enkidu back, but not Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is determined. He carries on, and Huwawa runs back into his house and puts on the second cloak. When he's doing that, Gilgamesh and Enkidu arrive at his home, and they start chopping away on the outer wall. And as they chop through the 7 walls, Huwawa continually puts on a new magic cloak and tries incantations and to do many things to scare them away, but they won't be scared away. They finally break down the 7th wall, and then at this moment, Shamash, looking down, realizes that the heroes are in trouble. And so Shamash goes and gathers from all over the world, from the Arctic seas, from the plains, from the faraway, terrible storms that roll across the Himalayas. He gathers lightning and wind and tornadoes and hurricanes, and he gathers them all together, and he forms it into a giant whip, like a thong, a whip with all sorts of sharp things attached to it, and he sends that down, and it wraps around Huwawa and wraps him tightly like a python around an animal. And Enkidu screams to Gilgamesh, "Kill him, kill him." And Gilgamesh approaches Huwawa, who is now all tied up. But Huwawa says, "Gilgamesh, let me live. I shall be your servant and serve you the rest of my days." But Enkidu said, "It's a lie. It's a lie, Gilgamesh. Don't trust him." So Gilgamesh takes his sword, and in 3 blows, he slays Huwawa. And when Huwawa falls, it says he's taller than the tallest tree you've ever seen. 10 times as tall and long. You could walk 100 paces or 200 paces. You wouldn't come to the end of Huwawa. And Gilgamesh celebrates. He has done the best deed of his life, and then he and Enkidu go into the forest. They find the tallest cedar, and they chop it down, and they leave it for the men of Uruk to come and drag back to the city. They are going to make a new gate for the town of Uruk to boast about their great deed to kill Huwawa, the god of the cedar forest. And they do return to Uruk, and then the bas-relief is carved of them celebrating their victory over the terrible monster, still a god though, Huwawa. That's the end of part 3, and I will be bringing again now part 4. Please continue to listen to this amazing, epic story of these heroes. Thank you.